thanks for stopping by Big Top Gaming. My name's Brian, and in this video I've got something a little different. It's a Song of Ice and Fire battle report, which isn't all that different because it's what I kind of started out doing with the channel. But the different thing is that this is going to be a solo game. I've done these in War Machine a little bit, but there's a lot of hidden information in A Song of Ice and Fire that kind of like peeled me off from trying to do anything like this. But with all the Vision in Flames articles that have been coming out, I've really wanted to try and start engaging with the game more. The pandemic has just really kind of shut down the ability to play with anyone around here. So this is probably the best way that I can try and engage with the game right now because Tabletop Simulator just doesn't really stick to my ribs. So I hope this is interesting at least. It's going to be a lot of me talking and some running back and forth, but I think it should be pretty cool, and I definitely would like your feedback in the comments below about this style of battle report because I think it's going to be the only way that I can really do these for a little while, so I appreciate the feedback. For the Baratheons, I decided to play Renly, the Charismatic Heir, and the gist with this list is to kind of go for a more attrition-based route. The Baratheon deck has so many ways of generating extra attacks that you really don't need to have high-quality attacks, you just need to have things that can survive the long run. So with that, I've decided to take 2 units of Rose Knights. Renly happens to be in one of them. I think I forgot to add the attachment here on the list, but Brienne the Blue is in the other unit of Rose Knights, and I've brought 3 units of Baratheon Wardens, and one of them has a Storm Crow lieutenant, and that's just, I really like running the Baratheon Wardens with the lieutenants, but I think with this list, since I upped it to have 2 Rose Knights, which can get pretty expensive, I wasn't able to get one for each one of those units. The coin zone is one that we're often going to be having, so it's pretty easy to make sure that for 1 point you can get those really stout wardens up to a really respectable combat output, even if they do only hit on 4s. But when you're throwing 4 or 8 dice instead of the 7, it feels pretty good for them. In terms of NCUs, I brought Eldon Estermont because I feel like the Baratheons have so many overlapping triggers that it's really hard to find the exact card you want for the right moment, and with him being able to filter through the deck so much, you're able to get rid of the things you don't need and make sure you're getting quality draws out of it and just loading your hand up. Shira Errol is really in here because she's a 3-point NCU and fits really well with Baratheons in general. I have a hard time not bringing her with me. Now, Marjorie Tyrell as an NCU is one that I didn't mean to have her in the list. I actually had Tycho in here to help bounce off the Rose Knights a little bit, but for whatever reason, when I was grabbing minis out of my cabinet, I grabbed Marjorie instead. I don't know why, but I think that she's perfectly fine in this list. There's nothing really wrong with her when you're running a bunch of Rose Knights because they can kind of do, she lets the Rose Knights go on double duty with being able to heal and then wound for herself, so you get this like nice swing of damage, and she just since she's able to do that and claim the zone, it feels really good since we've got Eldon here who's exchanging and Shira's kind of really only effective on 2 different zones. For the Night's Watch side, I decided to bring Othel Yarwick with this one, and there's a couple new things in here in terms of just the attachment boxes, really. I am bringing Watch Marshal as the solo, the Ranger Trackers with the Watch Marshal, a unit of conscripts with nothing, Jon Snow and a unit of Sworn Brothers that brings Ghost along with me too, and then a naked unit of Veterans of the Watch. I think that this list composition with Othel Yarwick is really like buffet style. I would prefer to try and double up on some of these things, but I think that with the Veterans and the way that Othel kind of alters the way things attack, I mean the star of the show in this one's going to be the Vets and the Ranger Trackers, but I think that just having a unit of Sworn Brothers that can kind of exist outside of needing Othel's help is really beneficial, and then when you get down to that, between all the NCUs and how much Jon Snow costs, a unit of conscripts just kind of exists to hold an objective in your backfield. They don't really need to do anything. So conscripts aren't going to be really pushing forward so much in this list like they would be normally if I had like 2 or 3 of them in here. In terms of NCUs, Othel, of course, is in here. And then we've got Craster for the points fixing. He's a 3-point NCU, and I really wanted to have the 3 in here. Plus, his ability is not too bad when trying to make sure that these units stick around a little bit more and turning some of those not so useful zones into something that we can actually benefit off of to make sure our vows are going off and we're getting cool benefits for putting an NCU on the zone. I do have Peter Baelish in here. He really could be any other NCU, but I think there's a lot of value in having Baelish in a Night's Watch army if you're going to be starting to screw around with vows and making sure that you can get the things to trigger off of having it attached. This way you can just make sure that if you don't really need the coin zone, then you can still claim it and then use like the attack or something to make sure that your shields, our shield that guards the realms of men is still active and things like that. So I just really like Peter Baelish in Night's Watch lists, even if he sometimes underperforms. I think the potential for him to do well really works, but I could easily see you swapping him out for just about any other NCU that costs 4 points for this list. So some things to knock out before I really get started with this, even though I'm going to be going here. First off, you have to apologize for the focus on this one. I'm kind of shooting from a different angle, and I just think I couldn't quite get it quite where I wanted it to be. Plus, it doesn't help that my minis are in a super duper not finished stage. I own all the factions for Ice and Fire, so painting it kind of gets a little daunting between all the other games I play. You kind of see me darting back and forth from side to side, but that's kind of the way this will end up working. So I had to play with both of the tactics hands kind of revealed, so I kind of understood what was going on from both sides, and for the most part, it really wasn't a huge deal because it just means that like there were just certain things that happen that need to happen, and it's not like I can't really play around it. You almost have to play Ice and Fire thinking that your opponent has every card they possibly could in their hand, so this really doesn't change my play style at all. In terms of the highlights for the NCUs, it really was just kind of claiming positions and getting some early gains. The Night's Watch side ended up getting the Rangers up, who then eventually ended up getting weakened from Shira taking some, I think it might have been... Shira taking the tactics board, or the missive position on the tactics board. Outside of that, Peter Baelish ended up crown zapping that unit of wardens that just moved up last turn, and they ended up failing, but I think they actually should have passed because I forgot about Renly's +1 bubble, but they ended up healing the 3 anyways, so it wasn't a big deal. In terms of objectives, we're playing on that Game of Thrones scenario, so we've got the Neg 2 panic test, double score objective in the middle. On the Renly side of the table, the wardens are right in front of +1 to your tactics hand and draw an extra card, or draw a card when you claim it. On the bottom side of Renly's his side of the table is the healed D3, which was one of the big factors in the Renly side taking that side of the table, so we get double duty out of those Rose Knights. On the Night's Watch side, there's some pretty spicy options. The Watch Marshal, who's being played by a giant right now because I was like a day behind on getting them in. He's claiming one that shuts off an attachment, and I believe I shut off Brienne, or the Brienne unit, and that was probably not the greatest call. I believe I end up switching it later on to Renly because that's where I really should have had that. And the one that Ghost is parking on right now is forcing a panic test at the end of the turn. So really what I'm trying to do here with the Night's Watch side is kind of dodge some of the threat ranges from the Baratheon stuff, because it's all speed 4. It's really slow. You kind of see they're all like, they just really shifted up their deployment line. So it's really just about kind of putting some force up there and just trying to wait for the next turn. So turn 2 comes around and the Night's Watch have the top of this one. In terms of cards in hand, I end up claiming the tactics position with, I believe, Craster right away. And that ends up getting me, I believe I have the Vicious enhancement, which I can't remember what it's, I think it's Serrated enhancement. Then I have the Critical Blow one. I can't remember the name of that one. It's not I think it's Mighty enhancement because the other one's Precision enhancement. And I think we just end up having Othel activate and take the crown, and then just search up his other enhancements. So I've got all 3 enhancements in hand. I have a sword, or a shield that guards the realm of men, a fire that burns against the cold. I can't remember what the other one was that I took. I think I might need to kind of adjust how I do how I do the tactics cards and dice rolls for the game to try and put it in a central spot, so bear with me while I go through these. You can see that the Renly hand is just massive right now, and that's really in part due to Eldon Estermont just being able to turn any zone into like kind of a pseudo tactics board slot. Makes it so that you don't feel like you're clunked up on those Baratheon multi-triggers so much. So down on the bottom here, I was kind of measuring out like where can the conscripts go to pull the Baratheon wardens off of that objective if they want the charge. So they can kind of hang out there and threaten for later, but they are making sure that those wardens just can't come and get them without giving up that objective. And the Baratheon player in kind ends up positioning Renly's unit to be able to come into those conscripts as well. It's not that they're really a big threat or anything like that, but they're a unit of bodies that could do some work, especially under Othel's enhancements. Next up, we have the Ranger go up, and he's bringing along the veterans that are behind him with the Follow Me order. The activation previously, the Sworn Brothers ended up taking that middle objective, which I probably could have had the veterans and the Sworn Brothers kind of switched in positions because I kind of want my Sworn Brothers to be counter bots. And you can see the way Renly's positioned and the way these wardens with the Stormcrow Lieutenant in there, they're kind of taking aggressive spots to where they can get into those Sworn Brothers, and I really don't want to have them be the first thing that my opponent connects with. The Watch Marshal gets pretty gutsy, kind of hanging out there in front of those wardens. But I feel like behind the hedge, there's not a big... The chances of the wardens coming off that objective to come into the Watch Marshal is really low. But we next up have finally some dice getting thrown, and it's going to be the Rangers who throw 8 dice into Brienne's unit. And this is where I need to, later on in the game, I correct kind of where I'm putting the tokens, because when I flip over to the other side with Brienne, I don't realize there's a weakened token on there still. And I definitely paid dearly for it because Brienne's unit loses 4 Rose Knights, which is not super duper awesome. And I have to take a panic test now. There's no modifiers or anything, so I was contemplating playing the Renly card that gives you the +2 morale bump, and I opted not to do that. Instead, I chose to save it for something else. But we do heal 1 back, so at least Brienne's functioning on full. The Ranger unit has a Watch Marshal in it too, so they're able to do the quickfire order. So there's lots more shots coming at them, and that buff from the Watch Marshal that's on the solo base is really helping them get there. Now I think we're getting down to the scoring of the turn, and the Sworn Brothers end up passing, so that was good for them. And I force a panic test on those wardens that are holding the objective with the extra card draw, and they end up failing that and losing a couple. And Brienne's unit ends up getting the kill. So Baratheons have the top of this turn, and on the Night's Watch side, I'm kind of feeling the burn for not having like Bowen Martian here instead of having Peter Baelish, just because I have so few cards in my hand. I'm burning through things so quickly. And with Baratheons having the top of the turn, they're kind of slowing down the production on cards. But they have to get really aggressive this turn, and instead of playing on the NCU board, they have to use Renly's unit to charge off into those Sworn Brothers right away. And I know that from the Baratheon side, if I don't get on that objective and start contesting it, that the game can get really out of control really fast with the way the scoring goes. So they charge in and drop a bunch of hits, and for Night's Watch we play Shield, and then we roll the rest. They block 2 of those and then take the rest. I think we end up failing. No, we don't fail Panic. It was just that we lost 3 in past. So we're not contested just yet, which is nice. And we still have full ranks, which means that Jon Snow is going to give these guys a lot of attacks. And I end up having to pick up all my dice because in addition to all this, I have Sword in the Darkness that goes on them after kicking off a shield that guards the realms of men, and then we've got the bonus from that Watch Ranger or the Watch Marshal as well. So there's a ton of hits there. I think all day after the critical blows that it's 12 hits that the Renly unit has to take on, and I'm still kind of getting my sea legs, so to speak, with Ice and Fire. So right here would have been a really good time to use the mark the target order from the Ranger trackers, but I opt not to do that, and it kind of hurts the Night's Watch side quite a bit because Renly failed that panic test by quite a bit, although I do end up playing the +2 morale card again, One of the nice things about this is that since I'm playing against myself, I'm not trying to jockey against or trying to pull these like gotcha plays. So I end up rolling it back to be able to play that card, so Renly doesn't end up taking all those wounds, because it just would have been the smart thing considering he's shut off now from that objective. So the Baratheons end up playing a counterattack card. I think it was Ours is the Fury. So no matter what, you're always going to get attacked by a Baratheon player. It's just going to happen whenever you touch them, and they end up blowing up the dice, and they blow, or the Sworn brothers end up not really saving quite well. So that's a big blow to that middle for the Night's Watch player, and Brienne ends up making her charge in on the Ranger trackers, and they actually don't do too bad with the saves. There's no real modifiers that are hurting them, and they pass their morale as well, especially with that tree by them. So they only took a couple wounds. They lost a horse, and I think one carried over, but I'm not too worried about those Rangers because they're not holding an objective right now. And with quickfire, I get to retreat, which I'm doing right now, and then I get to shoot. This time I end up putting the serrated enhancement on them. This is the only thing that's kind of bummy over here is that I've walked out of the Watch Rangers 6 inches, so I end up kind of correcting that, getting them back in short range so I can get 8 dice, and they miss a couple, but that's still 3 hits against those Rose Knights. And in terms of saves, they really don't do super well. And this is more me. I still haven't quite gotten on the program with the marked target deal, but and I definitely pay for it again because these Rose Knights failed panic, and they're nowhere near that tree. And I think at least I didn't think they were, but they might. Maybe that was a mistake on my part. I can't remember what I rolled in terms of like the fail right there. I kind of blazed by it. But they're not sitting real pretty, and the Rangers still haven't even activated, so they'll be able to get more shots at them, and Brienne's units just kind of stuck there. So the battery died, so there was a small transition that had to be made, but nothing was missed, except for my Watch Marshal did end up taking the charge into them. That's the only thing, was just missing the roll, and he blows it up, and takes both Brienne and the remaining Rose Knight down. So that's another point for Night's Watch, bringing them up to 4 points total so far, where I think Renly's only sitting on 2 points right now. And that Watch Marshal gets to kind of boogie away and be safe. Now I'm kind of away from my Sworn brothers and veterans, which I'm not super happy about, but he's at least kind of mobile to where I'm not too worried about things. And the veterans are kind of comfortable where they're at. They've at least got a good, like, side charge to Renly, which Renly recognizes and retreats away from those Sworn brothers. As much as it would be good to stick it out and fight, I had to use the maneuver position on the tactics board with Shira, so she didn't really get any cool bonuses out of it or anything, and just decided to kind of boogie out to keep Renly safe. In terms of the dice rolls, I can't remember what exactly it was I was rolling for, but there was a ton of dice thrown for some reason. This is like one of the many problems of playing against yourself, is you just can't remember everything that's going on. Plus, I'm also doing this real fast so that I can kind of keep pace with the video. You don't want to listen to me for an hour and a half. So next up, we get those wardens that are currently not turned on for the Stormcrow lieutenant into the Sworn brothers, but they don't really need it because the Sworn brothers failed every single save except for one, which is enough to take them out. So that's really unfortunate from the Night's Watch side. They really wanted those Sworn brothers to kind of hold the line, and again, this is a good example of why those veterans should have really been going for that middle objective, because not only can they survive better, but they also sustain better combat-wise. In terms of like their own deteriorating profile. So with that and counterattack, it just made it was a better idea to get them there. With Night's Watch having to make some really rough decisions, they end up setting in, I believe it's the serrated enhancement conscripts, and they make a couple hits, and they cause Renly to lose some wounds, but not enough to fail panic. And so not much is really gained there. And then the other wardens are now in a position to where they can charge and still be on their objective and get into those conscripts. And the conscripts end up failing all the saves, so now they don't even contest the objective that the warden's sitting on. So even though I feel like the conscript move was more of a panic thing, when I switched over to the other side and just saw how things were going to line up, I was able to see that the thing I was trying to dodge, which was these wardens actually doing anything, was something that they didn't get a chance to do. And I think that was actually from a counter charge even, and then the wardens got to do their normal activation, and that's why the conscripts are gone right now. So they get to surge forth and stay on that objective. Renly rotates a little bit just so we can start focusing in towards those veterans. We still have work to do because the vets get their charge off. They do leave the objective, letting Renly get his abilities back on, but now they're able to do some work. Unfortunately, I don't have any enhancements to make them fight better, but they end up connecting with every single attack. And the Baratheons, or the Wardens, are pretty stout, so they pass all their saves but 2 and make it through their morale no problem. So the veterans didn't really get to do a ton of work, but I believe they also didn't use the vulnerable token that's sitting on them, so that there's just a few bookkeeping things that I need to be really cognizant of. Part of me wishes I just had bigger tokens so I could really see them when they're on there, but, you know, it is what it is. We're going to work through it. So next up, the bottom wardens ended up punching out the hedge so that they could start getting aggressive, but we're at end of turn scoring, and Ghost ended up zapping them for a couple points. So I think the current point total is 6 for Renly for the Baratheon side, and then I think it's 6 or 7 for Night's Watch. So Night's Watch is going to try and jockey for some points here, and that really is going to be trying to do as much damage on the table in the middle as they can with those veterans. I did draw some enhancements here, but you can kind of see me flipping around with the score tokens now. I think actually Renly seems like he might have caught up to 7 as well between the victory through combat stuff that had happened. So I think they're neck and neck, which makes things not so great for Night's Watch, because I feel like the grind is where Baratheons enjoy existing, and right now Night's Watch, with the way Othel's set up, is not really enjoying the attrition part of it. Like, I just haven't had the big swings or played the right cards in the right places to get the leverage that I needed. So this is the critical blow enhancement, and I didn't roll any single 6s, so it's the precision enhancement, I believe. So they end up not really getting a whole lot of value out of that, which is really unfortunate because they do have like the best chances of getting good gains out of that. But the wardens in the middle end up taking quite a decent amount of damage from those, between the vulnerable save and the veterans still hitting decently. But good old Eldon Estermon is ready to claim this was Marjorie Tyrell that claimed the coin, ended up filling those back up. So we didn't really get a whole lot of value out of that. Craster ends up coming down to try and draw some cards and heal some wounds back a little bit. I think we ended up putting some back in the Ranger Tracker unit. But now the Baratheons are just trying to figure out what it is they're going to do with everything, because they're kind of chunked up in the middle here. I'm not too worried about Ghost coming out from behind those stakes, because they would give up, Night's Watch would give up the objective and then probably take some wounds or put Ghost in just a really awkward place. So the stakes is actually helping Renly's unit stick around a bit, and Ghost is nowhere near the threat that he used to be. So it's not a huge problem. So I think we might have had like a panic test or something on those wardens in the middle. That was probably the Night's Watch turn. So they end up shifting, the wardens end up shifting off the objective, because the goal now is to be able to make sure that Renly can get in there and start doing some work too. Shields comes down on the veterans and blocks some decent hits, and they only lose one model. But now we throw some attacks in with the veterans for their counterattack into those wardens, and they hit with all their attacks. And the Baratheons, or the wardens, end up taking quite a bit of casualties for that. They pass their panic though, but now we can get Renly in. And I didn't really go through the pivot and move, but I would have charged in a way where I don't have to hit those stakes. So I just kind of put Renly where he was going to exist. So getting into the side of the veterans hurts right now, especially because Shields is down. But it seems like I don't know if I couldn't have missed a damage roll here. Maybe I did. Maybe I missed an entire attack. Well, that's unfortunate if that's happened. No, this must be going on now. I'm not sure. This really should not be as complicated as it is. So that must have been the Baratheons active, or of course it's the Baratheons activating Brian. They're all Baratheon. That was the Wardens, I think, activating. So now maybe we're getting the Renly attacks in, and no, we're still swinging with veteran. Oh, because it's weird. There's so many out of order attacks with this stuff. There was the counter attack from the veterans, and then the swords from them, and then we had the normal attack. There's just a ton of attacks happening here. So you can see that finally those guys have done their thing. It must have been that Renly's unit went in and just didn't do a whole lot of work. Okay, so bear with me. I think Renly's unit is the one that's activating right now because I'm checking for They Will Make Me King. I believe that's the card where when Renly activates, he does wounds to things that are engaged with him and within one. So that Watch Marshal at some point in time tanked a ton of hits from something. Must have been a charge. I remember because he survived with one wound. I think it might have been from the Rose Knights, maybe an early charge or something. But Renly ends up killing that Watch Marshal, and they are worth points. And whittling down the veterans and the Rangers are it's pretty important right now for victory points. So I think now we're getting to the point where Night's Watch has to do some pretty quick work. I end up having Craster come off because we played and now his watch has ended when that Watch Marshal passed. And then we pulled off Craster, put him back on the combat zone, and instead of doing another attack, I ended up healing up the Ranger trackers just so I could try and get some more damage. I want to get rid of this Warden unit so that I can start doing something with the objective. And we end up moving them to start shooting at the side of the Warden unit, and that ends up dropping them pretty easy. But the veterans end up taking a morale test and lose the entire unit. So that was really not good. And it also wasn't going to be very gainful doing that anyways because Renly was kind of contesting that objective anyhow. And now I've just given him the means to take it over. So the Ranger trackers in a tizzy just kind of like shot the wrong guys. So now instead of using the quickfire or just instead of shooting again, I just decide to charge into those Wardens that are on the objective so I can try and contest it. I do roll back the clock a little bit and vulnerable them through mark target. And the Wardens are now just taking the extra vulnerable wounds. They are still on 2 and they pass morale. So now it flips back over to the Baratheons and or no, maybe the Baratheons are out of activation. So Ghost goes, and no, this is scoring now. So it looks like Ghost ended up shocking someone for panic, and Renly passed their morale test, and the D3 wounds end up healing back the Wardens. And I think at this point, I'm realizing that since I wasn't keeping track of the victory points through through victory through combat for the Baratheon side, after objectives are scored and I tally up the points for that, Renly ends up pulling it out, going up to 10 points right away, and the Night's Watch only gets 1 victory point off that turn because of the they get 2 technically, but that only takes them to 9. So this game was a lot tighter than I would have thought it would have been, and there were a lot of points where the game kind of flipped on itself. I think that I like the idea of throwing these up as fast as I've got them sped up because it means that I'm kind of talking for less time, and I know that I might have a sultry voice or something, but I don't think anyone wants to listen to me talk consecutively for that long. So let me know in the comments below what you think of the speed of the video. I know there's definitely things that I miss when I go this fast, but I feel like maybe if I slowed it down a little bit, it wouldn't add a ton of time to these videos. I basically want to try and keep them under an hour, but this one looks like it's even under 45 minutes. So like I said, I really would like some feedback on this solo play style. The first one is definitely going to be clunky, but I just want to get this out there and see what people think of it.